All right, today we're going to be looking at populations and biodiversity. And to start off, there's four important features to those things. It's going to be geographic distribution, so where animals are located within that area. Density, so how many animals per unit, whether it's square foot or square mile. Growth rate, how quickly organisms are being born. And the age structure, if they're more elderly, if they're more young organisms within that ecosystem. So let's look at geographic distribution, and basically it's just the location. In my example, I gave you wolf subspecies. So if you can look, they've taken the map and they've shown you with different colors each one of the wolf subspecies, and then it's geographic distribution, where on the planet you could find that animal. Now we've got a map of density. Density is pretty easy to figure. It's just the total population divided by the total land area. And that could end up being, as in the example, Joshua, I need your help on this. I still can't figure it out. Population per square mile, per square foot, depending on the size. So if you go California, you don't want to do population density per square foot. That would be crazy. So this is per square mile. And what it's showing you is human population density. So if you look in Southern California, you can see Los Angeles in that surrounding area. You see Orange County and San Diego, and you see up by San Francisco and some other pockets, Sacramento and other dense populations. Would be the same thing with animals. The same kind of layout. You do have the map with the overlay of colors for the density of the organism. Oh, and then you have growth rate. A couple different things affecting it. Number of deaths, and births, and migration. And migration we're breaking down into two parts, immigration and emigration. So let's go back to deaths. So if you have 100 rabbits in a field, and some of them die due to old age or due to predators, that's going to decrease your population size. It's also going to decrease your rate at which your population grows. Births, if you have more births every year, that's going to increase the growth rate or increase the total population size. And then immigration, we got two different types. Or migration, we have two different types. Immigration is into the area, so you can think of that. What letter does immigration start with? Letter I. What does into start with? Starts with the letter I. So immigration is moving in. Emigration is moving out of an area. I don't have a clever letters to use for emigration, but if you know immigration, you know the other. And that's organisms moving out of an area. So we know that organisms don't stay static unless there was a fence keeping them in. They're going to move across a given area of land. So a little bit more on growth rate. We're looking at two types of curves can help to describe growth in almost any type of population. So we could look at bacteria growth rate, and if you looked at population size over time, or you could look at rabbits and look at the population size over time. If you had unlimited resources and a consistently increasing, a steady birth rate, your population size would grow exponentially. So if you have 2 rabbits, they make 4 rabbits, 16 rabbits, 32 rabbits. If it just kept doubling in size, you'd get this exponential growth curve, and it would keep peaking like that. So if you drop bacteria, let's say Philip's at home, he's playing weird video games on his computer, and he's eating pizza, and then his parents call him, and he leaves to go out and paintball somewhere, and he leaves his pizza right next to his computer. Bacteria are going to fall on that slice of pizza, and they've got an unlimited food source for a little bit of time, so they're going to just keep eating off the top of that pizza. They're going to grow exponentially. What eventually happens in all populations is that they hit a limit, and that's when you can move down to logistic growth. So it's starting off exponentially growing. As the resources get depleted, it starts to slow down and eventually it kind of levels out. When it levels out, that doesn't mean that all the food source is gone. That just means that it's at a balance between the amount of organisms that are eating and the amount of food source that's being produced. So if it's a rabbit on a field, and it could hold 100 rabbits, the 100 rabbits are eating and living and feeding off the field without totally eating all of the grass away and the grass dying and killing their food source. Phillips Pizza, the bacteria live on there until they've filled up the whole surface of that pizza, and then they start competing with each other for space, and eventually they're going to hit a logistic growth curve and kind of balance out on his pizza slice. Limiting factors are what cause the population growth to decrease. So it's the population growth, so the over time, how many new organisms you add in. Density dependent factors, those are limiting factors that depend on population size. So competition, predation, parasitism, and disease. Those things, if you have one rabbit in all of the United States, it's going to be fine. It's not going to have any limits to its population size. Or 2 rabbits, let's say, and they can breed. They're going to find plenty of space to hide, they're going to have plenty of food to eat, and they're not packed tightly together, so they're probably not going to carry diseases or parasites and pass them on. So those are density dependent. Let's say you had a really large population size. So let's think about, we'll go to, I don't know, let's go to London. I'm not sure the date, but you go back a couple of thousand years to when the bubonic plague hit London. You have a bunch of human beings living crowded and packed into a city. A disease hits, and it's spread really easily. So the tighter packed in your population is, the easier it is to spread that disease. And you have a lot of people dying in a really gross environment. And then you have density independent factors, and that's going to affect the population regardless of size. So it doesn't matter if there's 2 rabbits in our United States or there's 1 billion. Things like weather, disaster, change of seasons, and human activities. These density independent factors, no matter if there's 2 rabbits living in Kansas and there's a giant tornado that rips through, if they're in that area, those 2 rabbits might die. If you have 1 billion rabbits in Kansas and the tornado rips through their small living area, then it might kill 1 billion rabbits. That's kind of a little ridiculous, but whatever the disaster is, if there's organisms living within the range of that disaster, it's going to affect them no matter what the population size is. Human activities as well. If we move into, let's say we go into Yellowstone and we start hunting wolves there, it doesn't matter if there's 100 wolves or 2 wolves. If people continually hunt, they're going to kill off that wolf population. In the other class, we had a really long, nice discussion of biodiversity. We read a little bit about it. Bio means life. Diversity is just a wide range of variations. So biodiversity is the sum total of different types of organisms. An area with a lot of biodiversity would be a rainforest. An area with a little bit of biodiversity would be a desert. In a rainforest, you have lots of trees, lots of different plants, flowers, insects, animals, all different kinds of things living together. In the desert, you've got just a minimal amount of plants and animals, so they have a low biodiversity. If you go into someone's like suburban neighborhood, also chances are it could be a very low amount of biodiversity. You've got human beings, you've got their dogs, their cats, a few animals, and then whatever they choose to landscape with. Typically they're just using grass or something. So you've taken what could have been a really dynamic forest with lots of different animals, and then you've cleared it away and added just one type of grass, a few types of ornamental plants, and human beings. So that's low biodiversity. Biodiversity is an awesome natural resources. We get industrial products, medicines, drugs, cool things to go visit and take photographs of. So nature's a pretty cool resource. A lot of different things that we get from it. And biodiversity is the word that we use to describe that range of different animals. that exist. So what are some of the threats? A lot of these are going to be human impacts. So if you look at the big known causes of animal extinctions, hunting, new species introductions, and habitat destructions. Hunting and habitat destruction are pretty easy. What they mean by species introductions is we can travel now all over the world using planes and ships. We get everywhere. A lot of times there will be holdovers. Animals will get on those planes or ships and they'll go to places that they shouldn't be. And they become a predator in that area or a parasite that's feeding off of or killing off all the other animals in that ecosystem. An example of this is in Guam. There are no snakes. So a couple times they've caught snakes on planes. Sorry for the bad joke. But the snakes have gotten off the landing gear. And luckily they've caught it in the airport. It's dangerous because if snakes were to get introduced, there's some native bird species that would be dangerous for them. If the snakes came, there'd be a good chance that they'd kill off a lot of those native bird species. You could also think of Hawaii, where rats came overboard from early whaling ships. There were no rats on the islands. Rats swam off the whaling ships, populated the islands because there was no predators for small mammals. Farmers in the area didn't want rats and mice destroying their crops, so they went, ooh, let's take an Indian mongoose, which is a really good hunter of rats and mice, and let's bring it to Hawaii. The mongoose ate some of the rats and some of the mice, and then proceeded to eat a lot of the flightless birds or native bird species in the area because the mongoose didn't have a predator or anything keeping it down. And that type of thing can go on, and those species kill off the species in the area. And endangered means the species numbers are decreased or low. It's possible to save it. Extinction, species completely disappears, like the dodo bird or dinosaurs, they're completely gone. Humans, biggest threat to that. So we talked about some of the things that humans do, like hunting. We also use animals for products. For example, rhino horn in a lot of Asian countries is used because it's supposed to have magical powers. Pollution is a big problem, polluting streams, air pollution, habitat fragmentation, and that introduction of invasive species are all things that are going to be impacts to biodiversity. And that is the lesson for today. Hey, what's up, Patricia?